The New American is proud to welcome Canadian firebrand Kate Wan to the program. She's a freedom fighter north of the border creating content. She's a social critic, and her work can be seen on YouTube, Odyssey, and she has her own website called veryopinionated.com. It's very-opinionated.com. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of yours. I've been going through your content. A friend of mine kind of hit me to your channel, and I saw the video. It was entitled "Government Made Disaster: How Government Starves People," and I kind of wanted to touch upon that concept with you. You also seem to be in a lot of your videos as well. You kind of touch economic issues, and you kind of speak very intelligently about economics. And I was just kind of wondering, are you like, do you have a background in economics, or is that you're just like an economics nerd like I am and just read economics books and stuff?
Yeah, pretty much an economics nerd. I don't have a background in economics, but I would say that the last 3 years or so, my husband and I have kind of gone on this journey of just learning a lot about history through the economical lens and in
Mhm.
terms of economical philosophy as well. And so when this last year and a half, things have been going kind of spirally, one
Yeah.
can say. We've kind of been looking at that through an economic lens. And we're also in a partnership with the American Institute of Economic Research. So some
Mhm.
of the videos on our YouTube channel are written by these fantastic authors who are specialists in the subject. And the video that you're referring to on the Holodomor, which was the famine in Ukraine, was actually written by somebody at AIER. And so that's wonderful because we can kind of take the imagery from the context that we understand history and economics and put it to this beautiful prose. And that's kind of how we end up with the results that we do.
Yeah,
It's a
I
joint
was
effort.
the reason why I wanted to kind of bring that up and kind of start there was just the premise of capitalism, right? And so capitalism gets like a bad rap, as you point out, and stuff. But the reality is that we aren't really living under a capitalistic system right now. So much of the economy is subsidized by governments and kind of NGOs and billionaire oligarch hedge funds and stuff. But the fundamental premise of Adam Smith, why capitalism was different than the age of mercantilism that preceded it, was that for the first time there was factories, there was mass production, and so prices fell for everyday goods in a way that they hadn't before, and so it was based on surpluses. And in the age of mercantilism, everything was based on scarcity. So, in the 1500s, they would sail to China, they would buy silks or they would buy spices, rare items. They'd come back to Europe, they'd sell them on the premise that their value was now increased because of their scarcity. Money was
Right.
was a product of the age of mercantilism. So you have these two competing models. One is massive surpluses, which is capitalism, where prices fall, everybody does better. And one is based on scarcity. And so you see a lot of the evils that appear to be happening now are kind of people who are stuck into that scarcity model, that mercantilist model, that globalist, having slaves in China, outsourcing, these colonies and stuff. This is all the age of mercantilism. This is not capitalism. And so you see them trying to tamp down on actual capitalism to create scarcities. And that's kind of what I
Yes.
wanted to touch upon in that video. So, so if you could speak to that, regarding say the Ukraine as an example.
Well, that was pretty much what they were doing back then, were by collectivizing all of the farms, they were creating this fake scarcity. So they kind of created scarcity by trying to centrally control everything at that point, and this was something that the farmers obviously were not happy with. And then there was obviously a lot of bloodshed on that front as well. And then when they were reporting upon this, they were not being honest about the the faux scarcity that they were creating. And I guess what it made me think about is that in that year there had been a drought, and so many historians were blaming the all of the deaths of that famine on the drought and saying it was the conditions that created the scarcity, when in reality it was the centrally planned government that was creating the scarcity there. And so this seems to be kind of a model that we're seeing happen again. And like, for example, in Canada, we have, through these different, how can I say, strategies that they're using to combat the virus at this point. What's happening is that they're doing this mass testing, which is causing factories to shut down once again and causing food shortages. And so it's kind of like a government created scarcity. So
Yeah.
this is where we can kind of see those parallels.
Well, one of the things that happened, there was a Russian demographer, and he was looking over the census figures for the United States during the Great Depression. And he said that there was a missing 6 million people. Then a German demographer came in and he said it was upwards of almost 7 million people died during the Great Depression in the United States that has never really been brought to the public's attention. Nobody's ever talks about it. And at exactly that time when people were starving to death, FDR was burning silos of wheat to keep the spot prices high. So you have these government policies that are, aimed more toward, kind of appeasing, business interests and not really toward, protecting the citizens who they're allegedly supposed to be protecting. And the irony of this is you're in Canada, we're in the United States, and Carol Quigley was talking about the phenomenal wealth of Canada and the United States of North America. He said that the United States, as an example, in The Tragedy and the Hope was the name of the book. He said that we were producing 5 times more wheat than the next, I think, like 5 or 6 countries combined. This was by 1900. And so you started to see these movements of people trying to tamp down on that productivity because it was hurting spot prices. Food was being plentiful, and you kind of make that point in the video as well, that that kind of famine is at historical lows. People are eating better than ever. Fatness is now a problem rather than famine.
Right.
And so you see them starting to trigger these things synthetically through government policies rather than through the weather doing it.
Right. And if I can speak to that as well, I think that what they're trying to do now, the globalists with climate change, is that they're trying to say that there's, this kind of weather causing food shortages, but they're actually creating these shortages behind the scenes as well. Once again, like you have, I believe, it was China that was buying up a bunch of wheat in the United States. Did you see something about that? Right. So
Well,
then that's. Go ahead.
I saw that the Department of Agriculture was paying farmers 1.5 times the amount of their crops to burn them and tying like a
Wow.
penalty to it. They said, if you don't burn these crops, then we're not going to give you the subsidies that you're used to, like in the next season. So they're pressuring them to actually create a food shortage.
Right. And then you have your cattle that won't be able to eat, and then you're going to have beef shortages, and then you're going to have, well, here's the solution, right? Like we can come in with this synthetic beef, this impossible
Exactly.
burger.
And they're also
So we're
doing
kind of in the
fruits
same
and
place.
vegetables. Fruits and vegetables grown through bacteria is another one. The Guardian has an article on that. And so so their model is giving us like food. Our food is already despoiled of like 80% of its vitamins, already.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be
Yeah.
giving us like beef that has no nutritive value, or fruits and vegetables that look like apples and bananas but actually have almost no nutritive value, because especially with things like hydroponics, where they are taken out of the soil, and it's the soil that imparts these vitamins, or beef. Like I remember quoting this before, Turgenev, the Russian novelist in the 19th century. He was a doctor, and he was talking about why beef is nutritive, and he said, because you're not just getting the meat, you're getting the meat plus the plants that the animal ate, so you're getting both. Whereas if you have Bill Gates synthetic meat, you're not getting the plants that the animal ate, because there is no animal, and it just looks like a steak, but it's not really not really a steak. So
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting that they like to do that, and it does relate again to the capitalist model where they say, oh, it's because of capitalism it's caused all of these problems, right? But as you said, we're not, that's not actually the reason. It's always the interference of government into a kind of more free market model that's causing these kinds of problems, and then they're blaming it on capitalism. And then it's interesting because you have then these bodies like the World Economic Forum who are saying, oh, well, you know what, we have something new, it's called stakeholder capitalism. So they're trying again to rename something as something different, because stakeholder capitalism is not the definition of what they'd like to do. Their model looks more like fascism. Would you agree?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like I said at the outset, that what they're calling capitalism, whenever you ask like a young college age person why they hate capitalism, they'll list off things that are from the age of mercantilism. They'll say slavery, they'll say, like all these things. Capitalism actually got rid of slavery because we had machines, we didn't need, human labor anymore. So capitalism actually obviated that, but they're but
Yeah.
they're taught to conflate the two. And so yeah, you
Yeah.
look at all this government interference, through licensing and permits and creating these synthetic shortages. We're seeing that with minerals. I just did a report on minerals, where the United States is flush with minerals, but because of licensing and permitting through the aegis, the Trojan horse of environmentalism, they're able to choke off these supplies and create synthetic shortages, thus creating higher spot prices. And if you're the person in charge of this, you know when to buy low and sell high. You get rich by creating these
Yeah.
synthetic shortages, and the public gets hurt, which leads me into just really quickly. The Green Reich is the
Oh,
book
you
that you
got
told me
it.
to get. Yeah. And so,
Look
yeah,
at
no, I've been
this.
reading it with great interest, and it's a wonderful. There you go. See, we're gonna bond over that. So yeah. So what are some of your thoughts regarding the Green Reich and the environmental movement, being used as a sort of kind of fascist totalitarian Trojan horse?
Well, I think being a Canadian citizen, all you have to do is look around at what's been going on the last couple of years to see that this is the model that's already being implemented here. We have massive carbon taxes, and this has been ongoing. Our energy bills all trickle down to the household level, where people are paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month more than they were a few years ago for energy. And this is greatly due to this ambitious target reduction scheme, which is now, carbon targets, a reduction scheme, which is now turned into absolute zero, which Justin Trudeau has said will sign on for the 2050 goal of zero emissions.
Mm.
So basically, if you look at this book, The Green Reich, he explains it very well. It's a philosopher from Belgium where they are also subjected to the same types of carbon schemes. And they really are just Ponzi schemes. So his hypothesis is that green totalitarianism is the most ambitious of them all, and it's far worse than even Marxism, because he suggests that Marxism, although it ironically killed hundreds of thousands of people in trying to do so, aimed to make all men equal on the same level, even though it meant you have to drag everyone down to the same level.
Mm.
Now, he says that the problem with environmentalism is that if you follow it to its ends of the algorithmic solution, it's that man is the problem. His very breath is the problem. CO2 is the problem. So every
Mm.
movement that he makes is a problem. And this is what we're seeing applied, right? Like um, Canada's aviation industry, for example, was the only one out of about 30 countries that didn't receive bailouts from the government, even though I don't necessarily believe in bailouts unless the government creates the disaster. Um, but he kind of let the industry fail on purpose. And this
Mm.
is wonderful because now we're closer in the race, of offsetting our carbon emissions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the like Marxism, he makes the point in the book that Marxism, it was all about factories. Marxism is the result of the Industrial Revolution, which is factories. So it's about the government seizing the means of production. And communist countries were incompetent, they were inept, but they lusted after the factories of the West. They wanted to industrialize. That was what Stalin did, what all the Bela Kun, like all these communist leaders, they were all about factory production. And the environmentalist movement, the author says, environmentalism does not intend to seize the means of production to increase and distribute the fruits in an equal manner. Environmentalists plan to seize the means of production to stop it. And so
Yes.
that's what we're seeing, because they're anti-human in a way that even Marxism wasn't ostensibly. Karl Marx, ironically, was a huge fan of the United States. He looked at the United States. He looked at the cheap land prices in the United States that weren't being manipulated by a land baron class because we didn't have an aristocracy. And he was looking at the wealth. American workers were making 2 to 3 times the money of people in Europe. And so he was like, we should get rid of our aristocracy. Look at America. Look how prosperous they are. Look at their factories. Look at the wealth they're generating. So he ironically, Karl Marx was a huge fan of many aspects of the United States, and wanted to replicate those. The environmentalist movement, however, does not. The environmentalist movement wants to roll that back because that prosperity created middle classes, and they want to get rid of middle classes because the middle class is the only thing that's stopping revolution.
Very well said. Very well said. I agree with that. And we're seeing that happen in Canada live. This has been going on for a few years now. I mean, we're still in this totalitarian quasi lockdown in Ontario where I live. And it's quite crazy because you could go look up videos of Toronto, which is the capital of Ontario, that was the most vibrant city in Canada, arguably alongside Vancouver and Montreal. And now most of these businesses are closed and perhaps permanently. So they're really taking out the middle class, and we're well on the way there. And we've already had more socialistic policies in our country for the last, decades, but especially the last few years under Justin Trudeau, it's become more and more transparent. And this is what I kind of fear for my American friends, is that now this seems to be the direction that you're going in more, stopping pipelines when the government is kind of seizing the energy sector and taking control of that. This is very, very, very scary to see happen, and I'm not sure how far they'll go with it.
Yeah, it's very explicit too. The shortages that they're enacting and stuff like that. Like I was on a Zoom call with Jason Hickel. He was an environmentalist, and he was talking about how we have to create all these synthetic shortages and punish the evil West, the sinful, evil capitalist West. And one of the things, if you read Aristotle's Politics in Book 5, he's got this section called How Tyrannies Are Maintained. And here's a quote from it. He says, all those who are under a tyranny should be oppressed with poverty, that they may not be able to compose a guard, and that being employed in procuring their daily bread, they may have no leisure to conspire against the tyrant. And so basically, I mean, this is their methodology. They want us poor, just like the World Economic Forum said, you will own nothing, but you will be happy, to which I always ask, are the oligarchs going to relinquish their wealth? Are they going to be giving up? Oh, it's just us. It's just,
Exactly.
I've never heard Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or any of these people pushing these things. I never heard that they're going to be living in tiny little trailers like we're supposed to be, eating insects.
Yeah, I look forward to it, right? Can you imagine Bill Gates coming out and saying, I really look forward to the day that I own nothing. I'm just counting down the hours.
Yeah, exactly. And what does this mean? I've asked a friend of mine who's a sustainability guy, and I asked him, like 9/10 of human rights are based on property rights. What happens when nobody owns property? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how does that affect, like the rest? And you already see it happening, through the aegis of kind of collectivism and stuff, where if you even assert that you have individual rights, they call you a sociopath. And they're like, oh, the collective says that you have to, you know what I mean? They're already stripping our concepts of individual rights. And without a concept of individual rights, you can't have a republic, because the whole purpose of a republic is protecting individual rights. So, I mean, this is striking at the very heart of everything that, that we are,
And because Canada is not a republic, because we are a democracy, this is where we differ. This is if you look at now how the United States has kind of completely opened up and Canada is still half closed down. You could see really the difference there.
Well, I mean, exactly. I mean, you guys remained for a very long time a colony of the UK. You're in the Commonwealth country and all that kind of stuff, and the Queen on your currency and everything. And I think she even has meddled in kind of removing prime ministers and different like governors and stuff like that. She's actually asserted some of her her power. So you guys are much more constrained than even we are. Australia, New Zealand too. So you see the kind of Commonwealth countries have gotten the brunt of it the worst. But I just wanted to end the call there, and I wanted to thank you, Kate, for coming on. And I wanted to once again tell the viewers this was Kate Wand. She's on YouTube and Odyssey and very-opinionated.com, veryopinionated.com. And she's got great merch, by the way. She's got hoodies and shirts and mugs. Kate, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Really enjoyed our chat, and hope to have you on our show as well soon.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do that. Thank you.